All my life I tried to be a good wife. A decent mother. But after my ex-husband, Gary, betrayed our marriage, he walked away without ever looking back. It was just me holding everything together. I raised our son Andrew on my own, piece by piece, year by year. The year Andrew got married, I drained every last penny of my savings to renovate our old house.
Which city are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And hey, make sure you watch till the end. Something's going to happen that you won't see coming.
I just wanted the newlyweds to have a comfortable place to live, something warm and welcoming to start their life together. But never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that, on my birthday of all days, Andrew would walk into that freshly painted home, with Gary. The man who disappeared from our lives over 2 decades ago. Worse yet, Andrew insisted that the master bedroom, the nicest room in the house, should go to his father. He said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. Mom, he told me like he was the reasonable one here. I know Dad made mistakes and yeah, you had it rough for a while. But that was ages ago. He wants to come back now to return to our family. Can't we just move on? Tears burned my eyes before I could stop them. You think a few words can erase what he did to me? I said, my voice shaking. I can't even tell you how disappointed I am in you, Andrew. He looked stunned, like my reaction somehow came out of nowhere. Why are you still stuck on what happened back then? He shot back. It's really not a big deal anymore. I've already made the decision. Dad's moving in. This house. I'd spent months remodeling it, turning it into a modest 2-bedroom. The living room's barely big enough for a dining table. I'd planned for Andrew and Tessa to take the sunny master and I'd stay in the smaller room. That was fine with me. I never asked for much. So I asked calmly, if your dad moves in, where exactly do I sleep? Without missing a beat, Andrew said, with him of course. That way it's easier for you to help take care of him. Gary was parked in his wheelchair, tapping his knuckles on the armrest like he didn't hear a word. Half humming some old tune, eyes barely open, not a single worry on his face. And I just felt cold. A kind of cold that started in my chest and spread like ice water through my veins. Mom, I know this is sudden, Andrew said, eyes down like that made it better. But I really don't have a choice. Dad broke his leg and he needs someone right now. You're retired, you've got the time. Honestly, having you both under one roof? That used to be my biggest wish as a kid. I closed my eyes. Took a deep breath. Tried not to let it all boil over. Then quietly I said, Andrew, do you even remember what today is? He froze. Turned to glare at Tessa like this was somehow her fault. She looked startled, then stepped forward with an apologetic smile. Evelyn, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot. I waved her off and kept my gaze on my son. Tessa, it's not on you, I said gently. That was meant for the boy I raised for 32 years. Andrew rolled his eyes, his voice tightening with frustration. Mom, I've been under so much pressure at work lately. I just forgot, okay? If this had been any other day, I might have let it slide. Made excuses for him. Felt sorry. But not today. Not while Gary sat there smug and silent. Not when Andrew could remember to bring back the father who abandoned him for over 20 years. But couldn't be bothered to remember my birthday. I had no idea when they started talking again. Years ago, Gary drained every last cent from our savings and ran off with another woman, leaving me alone with a little boy and a mountain of bills. Andrew and I clawed our way through those years, scraping by on hope and grit, until I finally watched him walk across the stage with his master's degree. Only then did life feel a little less cruel. I always felt like I owed Andrew something. For the father he never had. For the kind of childhood I couldn't afford to give him. So I overcompensated in every way I knew how. I'd head to the grocery store before sunrise, get lunch made before he even woke up, and hand-deliver it to his office in a thermos. When he got married, I added Tessa's lunch to the routine too. Only after they were fed did I come home and throw together something simple for myself. Then I'd go out again for dinner groceries, come back to clean the house, do the laundry with the TV humming low in the background. I kept my phone close, always ready to start cooking the second he called. Ever since I retired, my life had revolved around their little household. Like a full-time maid with no paycheck and no days off. And now, this man who claims to be too busy with work, had the gall to hand over the very home I poured my savings into, to the father who abandoned him, and called it his childhood dream. This was the son I raised alone for over 30 years. I stared at Andrew. Genetics are funny things. Looking at him now, all those tiny details I used to ignore suddenly came flooding back. When he was little, Gary would come home drunk and take it out on me, screaming, sometimes hitting. I'd quietly wipe the tears away, cover the bruises with long sleeves, and force a smile so Andrew wouldn't know anything was wrong. I really thought I'd shielded him. But one day he got in trouble at school for flipping a girl's skirt. When I scolded him at home, he screamed back through tears, "You're a bad mom. I'll tell Daddy to come back and hit you." That broke something in me. Years later, when he was grown, I finally told him everything his father had done. He just stood there, stunned, and then bowed his head and apologized. Said he was too young to understand back then. And I forgave him. He was just a kid. But what about now? 200,000, I said again, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. That money was my life's work. Saved from long hours on my feet, late nights sewing under a single lamp, counting every penny. Even when I was sick, I wouldn't touch that fund. I used that money to renovate this house. I want it back. Andrew frowned and glanced toward Gary. Dad, come on. Mom's upset. Just apologize and calm her down, okay? That's all it took. Gary, who'd been playing deaf and dumb, suddenly lit up like a bonfire. He gripped his cane, stood up, spat at me and snapped, "Evelyn, who the hell do you think you are? This house was given to me by the company. I've got every right to live here." I looked him dead in the eyes. My tone flat. That house was assigned to us the year we got married. All I want now is the 200,000 I put into the renovation. That threw him off for a second. But then he went back to his old tricks. "You're seriously fussing over some damn money? Spending on your son is your job." "That was my money," I shot back. He sneered. "Or are you planning to run off and blow it on some new man?" I flexed my wrist. Over the years, I'd taken on every dirty, back-breaking job just to keep this family afloat. I've put on a few pounds since then, and I'm no longer the woman he used to knock down with a single slap. I didn't say a word. Stepped forward. And slapped him. Hard. He wobbled and crashed to the floor, yelping in pain. "Dad, are you okay?" Andrew scrambled to his side, his voice panicked as he turned to me. "Mom, what the hell? You didn't have to hit him. Couldn't we just talk about this like normal people?" I looked down at Gary coldly. "Say one more word and slapping you will be the least of your worries." He kept grumbling under his breath, but I didn't even bother responding. I turned to Andrew and held out my hand. "If you don't have the money now, write me an IOU." They both yelled in unison, "Mom, how can you say something like that?" Gary's face turned beet red as he yelled, "Evelyn, you're out of your damn mind." "Andrew, don't worry, my boy. I've got money. When I die, it's all yours." I let out a bitter laugh. "Well, maybe you could do us all a favor and give it back to me now. Save us the wait." "You..." Gary was trembling with rage, teeth clenching so hard I thought he might crack a molar. Tessa rushed in with a nervous smile, trying to calm the air. "Evelyn, please, we're all family here. Everyone's just a little emotional right now. We said things we didn't mean." I pulled my arm out of her grip. My voice was cold. "If you really think you're part of their family, then count me out. I'm done. I won't live in filth." And with that, I opened the door and walked out. I didn't go back to that freshly renovated house. Dragging my suitcase behind me, I walked all the way to the main road. The sky was already dark, the wind slicing against my face. I pulled out my phone, picked the cheapest shared rental I could find, booked it, got the address. Done just like that. Under the glow of unfamiliar streetlights, everything felt hollow inside me. Someone on the corner was handing out flyers for a local hair salon. I reached out and took one. The young man looked surprised that someone like me would be interested. He hesitated but handed it over anyway. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a small corner salon, staring blankly into the mirror. The woman staring back at me had graying hair, deep lines carved into her forehead and around her eyes. Her reading glasses sat crooked on her nose, the bridge wrapped in a loop of clear tape. It was as if her whole life had been patched together, until now when even the patches started giving out. That argument earlier felt like a storm. Now only exhaustion remained. Almost 60. I asked myself, what was I still fighting for? But then I thought, if I don't fight, when will I ever live for myself? Truth be told, I'd wanted to dye my hair for years. But I always talked myself out of it. That money, I'd tell myself, would be better spent on some fresh seafood for Andrew or a decent outfit for Tessa. As long as they were happy, it felt worth it. If he smiled, I felt fulfilled. But now, why should my happiness be measured by theirs? Why was I always the last person on my own list? I closed my eyes as the stylist's warm fingers gently massaged my scalp. The rare, simple comfort nearly brought tears to my eyes. I never told Andrew, but last month, while he and Tessa were off honeymooning in Hawaii, I went back to my hometown. I visited an old friend I hadn't seen in years. She'd just been diagnosed with cancer. Before she could even begin treatment, she was already in critical condition. She lay in that hospital bed, frail as a dried branch, too weak to speak. Her hands, dry, skeletal, gripped mine with desperate strength. Her eyes, glassy and wet, stared into mine. She had spent her whole life giving. When she was young, she took care of her parents, helped raise her siblings. After getting married, she endured cold stares from her in-laws, worked alongside men at the factory all day, then went home to cook and clean. She became a mother, gave her all to raise her children, and then dove straight into helping raise her grandkids. She endured. She waited. Her entire life she kept holding out hope. Just for a sliver of peace in the end. Hoping maybe when her grandkids grew up and her husband passed on, and her body still had a little strength left, she might finally catch her breath. Maybe have a few years just for herself. But she was like a candle burning at both ends, lighting the way for everyone else until there was nothing left of her. She didn't want to go. You could see it in her eyes. How could she? The day I got the call that she'd passed, something lit a fire in me that I couldn't put out. And today when I saw Gary again, that fire roared back to life. My phone buzzed several times. I hit decline each time. Eventually I shut it off entirely. "Ma'am," the stylist said gently. "Take a look. What do you think?" I opened my eyes and barely recognized the reflection. My hair was jet black, shiny, full of life. Once upon a time I used to care about how I looked. There was a day I wore a floral scarf to work. Just a little thing, but Gary mocked me for it. "You trying to dress up? You should look in the mirror before embarrassing yourself." What he didn't mention was that I'd just been named Employee of the Year at the factory. I'd earned a bonus. He took that bonus and spent nearly all of it on cigarettes and booze. I had to fight to keep even a small portion of it. From that, I bought Andrew a toy. With the few bucks left over, I picked up a few yards of cheap patterned fabric and sewed myself a dress. That fabric. That dress. Suddenly, I remembered something. I found it next to the neighborhood recycling bins. A dusty, half-broken sewing machine, buried in a pile of discarded furniture like some worthless piece of junk. It was the only thing my mother had ever left me. Back when I was younger, I used it to stitch together clothes, sew curtains, patch quilts. With that old machine, I pieced together a life for Andrew and me. Clean, decent, independent. Now it lay tossed among bent chairs and rusted metal. The foot pedal was snapped off, the thread spool long gone. The once polished body was scratched and dulled, as if time itself had carved scars into its surface. I knelt beside it, gently brushing off the dust, like I was wiping away the dirt from a dignity that had been buried too long. Then I placed it carefully on a clean tile in the corner and made my way upstairs. Before I even reached the door, I heard Andrew's voice through the crack. "It's so late. Why isn't Mom back yet? Dad's about to faint from hunger." Tessa's voice came next, quiet and hesitant. "Maybe we should just order something?" Andrew sounded annoyed. "It's Dad's first day home. What kind of message does takeout send? He's got health issues, he needs a proper meal." I pushed the door open. My freshly dyed black hair fell over my shoulders. Andrew looked up and just froze. "Mom, didn't you always say hair dye was unhealthy?" I nodded. "I did. But today I decided to do something just for myself." He stared at me, frowning like he'd caught me doing something shameful. "That must have cost a lot," he said, like I'd swiped his credit card instead of using my own retirement savings. I smiled faintly. "Not as much as your lobster dinner." He opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. "There's food in the fridge. You can cook it. I'm not staying for dinner." He blinked in surprise, then tried to brush it off with a forced chuckle. "Mom, come on, don't be like that. There's still shrimp and beef. We were hoping you'd make your red wine beef stew tonight. You love that dish." I didn't answer. I walked slowly over to his glass display case filled with collectible figures. The shelf sparkled under its little LED lights, like some shrine to what he truly valued. I bent down, opened the cabinet door and pulled out one of the figurines. Andrew jumped up instantly, nervous. Mom, please don't touch that. It's a limited edition. I placed the plastic figure gently on the dining table and said calmly, Andrew, when you were little you asked me what something valuable meant. I told you it's the kind of thing money can't buy. He said nothing. That sewing machine downstairs? It was my mother's. After your father left, I leaned on it to survive for quite a while. I put you through school with it. I kept us afloat with it. He lowered his head, still silent. And now you toss it out like garbage because it takes up space. Meanwhile, your father's beat-up suitcase gets to take over the whole damn room. I stood, still composed. My voice didn't waver, but I didn't look back either. I'm not angry. I just don't feel attached anymore. I walked into the bedroom and pulled out the suitcase I had packed days ago. I was ready to leave. Andrew stood in the living room, torn, trying to stop me. Mom, you've made your point. Can we just cool off and move on? I didn't turn around. Don't call me Mom. You stopped treating me like one a long time ago. Just as I reached for the door, Gary's voice came from the bedroom, thick with that old sarcastic tone. Oh, let her go. She's always the martyr, right? The world owes her everything. We're all just terrible people and she's the poor, poor saint. I paused, stood still for 3 long seconds, then slowly let go of the suitcase handle. I turned and walked straight into the bedroom, stopping at his bed. I bent down, looked him square in the face. That smugness still lingered on his lips. Calmly I said, You've been a selfish man your entire life. But I'm not going to scream. I won't cry. I won't let you humiliate me one more time. But you should know this. Whatever you need to survive from now on, it won't come from me. And as far as I'm concerned, you're nothing but a coward. A worthless, miserable excuse for a man. The grin vanished from Gary's face. I stood up, walked back to the door. This time no one tried to stop me. I found a shared rental on the outskirts of town. It was a little out of the way, but the rent was far cheaper, and something I could easily cover with my pension. The leasing agent was a girl in her 20s. She glanced at me once, said nothing, and disappeared into the office. A few minutes later, she returned with a small paper box in her hands. Miss Dawson, she said, I just saw on your file, it's your birthday today. Happy birthday. Inside the box was a small slice of cream cake, fragrant with strawberries. I stood at the door for a long time before finally sitting down. That first bite of sweetness stung my eyes a little. For the first time today, I actually felt like crying. Once I settled in, I re-downloaded a video app one hadn't opened in over 2 years. I've always kept a journal, scribbling thoughts in the margins of grocery lists or old receipts. Later, after Andrew gave me one of his old phones, I started recording little videos instead. Images, voices, comments. It all felt so much livelier than paper. Back then, I was just learning how to shoot short videos. I'd film while cooking, feeding birds, or tending to my flowers. Every clip felt like a chat with a distant friend. Maybe I got too into it. A few times I lost track of time. By the time I realized, Andrew was already home and dinner was it touched my lips. The chill of the day melted away. Andrew never liked that flavor. Said he was sick of it. But I liked it. Especially here in this quiet new space, sipping soup alone as the sky outside turned to dusk. I looked up. The horizon shifted from soft pink to deep violet, like a sheer silk scarf unraveling slowly between the buildings. The red sun sank into the clouds. A final streak of light slipped through the window, landing on the floor like powdered gold. I couldn't look away. All these years I never really stopped. Always moving. Always working. Like a wind-up toy wound too tight. I missed a lot. Including this soft, quiet beauty above my head. I repaired the sewing machine. Trimmed some fabric and made a new tablecloth, stitched new curtains. I even placed 2 pots of jasmine on the windowsill. When the breeze blew in, the whole apartment smelled like summer. Soon I met my new neighbor. My roommate, technically. Her name was Ashley, a bright-eyed girl in her early 20s, buzzing with energy like a little squirrel. That night, I'd just taken my first bite of dinner when I heard her pacing outside my door back and forth. Finally, she knocked, cheeks flushed pink, and asked, "What are you making in there? It smells incredible." Right on cue, her stomach growled. I laughed and ladled a bowl of soup from the pot. She sat down, ate slowly and gratefully, and between spoonfuls she said, "Miss Dawson, you're amazing. Like seriously, I idol." I couldn't help but chuckle. It's nothing special. Just an old family recipe. Not 10 minutes later, she knocked again. this time holding a box of freshly delivered fried chicken. "I ordered too much," she said. "You've gotta try some. The sauce is crazy good." I took a bite. She practically bounced in place. "I knew you'd like it. You're so chill, not like my grandma. She won't even let me say the word fried chicken. Calls it garbage food." From that day on we were friends. Sometimes I'd make extra and share it with her. Sometimes she brought over snacks or fruit she picked up at the store. One afternoon she handed me a small jewelry box. "Pretty, right? I saw it and immediately thought of you." She helped clasp the necklace around my neck, then stood behind me, both of us facing the mirror. She nodded, beaming. "Knew it. You look even better in it than I imagined." I touched the pendant, feeling something stir deep inside. That was the moment I realized, kindness can come back to you. Not everyone is a black hole, taking and taking with nothing to give in return. Some people make you feel like even a bowl of soup or a smile is something worth cherishing. That night I got a call from Andrew. I hate to admit it, but I'd been thinking about him now and then. Every time Ashley grinned and praised my cooking, his face would flash through my mind. Always with a frown, always picking something apart. Too salty. Too bland. Soup too hot. He'd just purse his lips and go silent. When Ashley helped me pick out fabric, said she wanted to learn how to sew some cushions, I couldn't help but think of him too. Back then, whenever the sewing machine got a little loud, he'd shout from the other room, "Mom, can you not make so much noise? I've had a long day, I'm trying to rest." But he wasn't always like that. When money was tight, he ate potatoes and plain bread, never once complained. He wore clothes I sewed by hand, never asked for more. I remember one year his school planned a fall field trip. I couldn't scrape together the money for it. His eyes were red, but he smiled and said, "It's okay, Mom. I don't really like going out anyway. I can stay home and read." After he went off to college, our conversations grew scarce. Most days it was just, "Mom, when are you transferring the allowance?" Or during the holidays, "I won't be coming home this time. Got too many lab assignments." Once in a while he'd text, "It's hot out, don't try to save on the AC." And I'd replay that message in my head for days. Then he graduated, got a job, fell in love, got married, and our relationship turned into something else entirely. He started telling me which week he wanted steak, which day he wanted cake. Said he'd be working late, reminded me not to forget his soup. Nothing really changed. When I answered the call, I could hear it in his voice. He'd been drinking. There was a faint slur to his words, soft and familiar, almost like he was trying to be sweet. "Mom, you have no idea. I've been eating takeout for days. My stomach's killing me." My chest tightened, but I kept my voice calm. "If your stomach hurts, go see a doctor. I'm not one." He went quiet, probably waiting for me to soften. I didn't. "If you can't stomach takeout, make something simple yourself. Or did you call just to tell me your belly hurts?" "Mom," his tone softened, almost pleading. "You know I can't cook. I can't live off frozen pizza and canned soup forever." That's when it hit me. He didn't call to check on me. He called because he was hungry. My voice turned colder. "Then learn. There are thousands of tutorials on YouTube. Watch a few. You'll figure out how to fry an egg." He could tell I wasn't bending this time. His tone shifted, sharper, more annoyed. "Mom, I work late every night. I barely get a second to breathe when I get home. Can't you try to understand that?" "I do understand," I said evenly. "Which is why you can hire a live-in helper. Or order something nicer than canned soup. You're in your 30s, Andrew. You're healthy. You got a brain. I don't owe you dinner. I don't owe you care." Saying it out loud brought an odd sense of peace. Maybe he'd always known that. Maybe that's why he rushed to bring Gary back, so someone else would orbit around him again. There was a pause. Then Andrew's voice turned icy. "Mom, you're being selfish. I'm your only son. And just because I made one decision you didn't like, you stop caring about me? What do you want? Cut me out of your life." I let out a quiet laugh. "Take a look around. What kind of son are you? Your worthless father vanished for over 20 years. He walks back in and you roll over, wagging your tail like a loyal puppy. You let him in like he never left, and then expect the woman who raised you to take care of him too." I hung up the phone. No hesitation. No guilt. Just a strange, quiet sense of finally being free. Andrew used to give me $1,500 a month. Said it was for groceries. Sometimes he'd go heavy on seafood and the money wouldn't cover it, so I'd pay the rest out of pocket. Never told him and he never asked. Now that I didn't have to serve him anymore, I took that money and signed up for the Silver Scholars program at the local community college. Every week I'd meet my classmates, most of them around my age, in a little classroom to learn choir, photography, and some basic video editing skills. I'll never forget that one evening on the balcony, watching the sunset spill across the city skyline. It hit me hard. All these years I'd lived with my head down, revolving around the kitchen, around my family. I'd never paused to look up at the sky above me. I sacrificed my life for someone else's future. I saved for over a decade so Andrew could have a decent home to bring a wife into. Back then it never crossed my mind that one day I'd say goodbye to him for good. Never thought that real peace, real freedom, would begin the moment I walked out of that home. Now I carry a second-hand camera on my back, walking the city's streets, parks, and harbor fronts, capturing the sharp steeples of red brick churches, the bold blooms of zinnias in corner gardens, and the sunlight dancing outside coffee shops in the late afternoon. I snap photos of my own cooking, the hem of a new dress fresh off my sewing machine, and the fried chicken and blueberry pie Ashley and I order on weekends. I take my camera to every choir session, recording the moments we rehearsed together in the echoing practice hall. We're traveling out of state for a competition this month. Ashley helped me look up train tickets and hotels, printed out a little itinerary, and even marked the small towns along the way worth stopping in. Most of my choir mates are even older than I am, some with full heads of white hair, but their energy could put any teenager to shame. We hike the trails through national parks, arms stretched wide on cliff edges with the wind in our faces. We pause by lakesides to cup cold water in our palms and watch the sunlight ripple quietly through it. That grounded, tangible feeling of being in the world. It's something I'd never truly experienced before. And I don't regret realizing it late. Because regret is useless. It wastes time and punishes you without ever changing the past. What I want now, what I'm finally ready to do, is take care of myself. Let go of what drains me. And start living. The night before our competition, Andrew called again. He spoke like nothing had happened, same familiar tone, a little casual, a little complaining. Mom, what's with women these days? Always thinking about their own families even after they're married. It's a holiday, right? But today Tessa ran off to her parents' place before lunch. Didn't even stick around to spend time with me and Dad. You tell me, is that normal? Does that sound like someone who knows how to be a wife? I listened. Waited. I knew where he was going with this. He thought I'd chime in, criticize Tessa like I used to. Thought I'd back him up. Take his side. I took a breath and spoke calmly. Andrew, her parents raised her for over 20 years. She married you, not sold herself to you. She's your wife, not your father's maid. That's your dad, not hers. His tone dropped, sharp with irritation. Mom, she married me. Doesn't that make Dad her dad too? I just asked her to help with a little laundry and she refused. What's the big deal? Just a few things to scrub. I cut him off, voice steady as ever. Then why don't you do it? Did you lose your hands? Or are you afraid your arms will fall off if you wash your own clothes? Silence. He hadn't expected that. Not from me. Women of my generation. We were raised steeped in that old-fashioned belief that the man should lead, the woman should serve. I used to teach him that too. His father wasn't around, so I pushed Andrew to be the man of the house early. Gave him control over everything. Let him call the shots. But now I know I was wrong. I sighed and said, if Tessa stays, that's her choice. Whether you can hold that home together, that's your ability. And me, I owe Tessa an apology. I worked so hard to keep our family afloat, I never stopped to teach you how to be a good husband. The line went quiet for a long time. I could hear his breath, shaky, uneven. Just as I was about to hang up, he whispered, Mom, I really don't think I can do this much longer. Can't you just come back and help me? I knew Andrew hadn't been doing well lately. Not long ago Tessa called me. Her voice was careful but sincere. Evelyn, thank you for letting the neighbors know it was Andrew who insisted on bringing his father into the house, and that you only left because you had no other choice. If you hadn't, people would have thought I was the rude one, kicking out my mother-in-law just months into our marriage. She didn't complain, not once. But I could hear it in her voice. She was walking on eggshells in that house, every single day. She also told me what had happened after I left. At first, Andrew was wrapped up in the fantasy of Dad finally coming home. Like somehow the hole left in his childhood had been filled. But Gary didn't turn that reunion into some heartwarming story. Just a few days in, he started criticizing the food, complaining about takeout, demanding that Andrew hire someone to cook for him. Andrew thought sure the man was old, had trouble moving, he needed help. So he hired a caregiver. But Gary complained the woman was too slow, too old. Demanded someone younger. They brought in someone younger. And Gary got worse. He barked orders, treated her like a maid, made inappropriate comments, even tried to touch her. In just 2 months, 4 caregivers came and went. One after another. Eventually, even the home care agencies refused to take their calls. And that wasn't even the worst of it. One day while they were both out, Gary broke into their bedroom. He rummaged through Andrew's dresser, used his razor to shave his armpits, sprayed Tessa's perfume around like air freshener. He tried on Andrew's suits, wrinkled them to hell, and left greasy handprints all over Tessa's favorite white dress. Andrew nearly lost it when he came home. But the second he raised his voice, Gary launched into a wailing fit. I gave everything to this family, and now you people won't even let me lie down in peace. My own son turned on me. Ever since he got married, all he does is take her side. I don't even belong in this house anymore. Their building already had thin walls. It didn't take long for the neighbors to hear the shouting and start gossiping. Now whenever Andrew steps outside, people whisper behind his back. Cold to his mother. Unfilial to his father. No one sees the full story. Just the spectacle. He works all day, then comes home to cater to a man who resents him. It hasn't even been a year and he already looks like life drained him dry. He's thinner. Hollow. Haunted. I listened to Tessa quietly. I didn't feel much. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I saw it coming. Sometimes it takes real pain to make someone finally let go. Later that week, Andrew called again. There was a pause. Then he said softly, Mom. I glanced over at the garment bag near the door, the one holding my choir outfit for our upcoming performance. My voice was steady. Andrew, this is the last time I'll say this. You're an adult. No one is obligated to carry your life for you. I'm not your emergency backup maid. I'm not a live-in housekeeper on call. You pushed me away over and over. And now you want me back like nothing happened. It's too late. And with that I hung up. No second guessing. No lingering guilt. Just a quiet certainty. But I never expected that the next time I'd see him would come so soon. It happened right after our choir competition wrapped up. We weren't a seasoned group, just something stitched together for the season. From our first rehearsal to the final performance, it had only been about 2 months. Out of 7 teams, we placed 5th. Not impressive, not terrible. Everyone seemed content with that. I was walking home, carrying a little gift I'd picked up for Ashley, when I saw the crowd gathered at the entrance of our complex. Right in the center stood Andrew, holding a microphone, eyes red, visibly emotional. In front of him, a live stream setup, tripod, ring light, phone clamped into place, broadcasting it all. My dad left when I was just a kid, he said into the mic, his voice trembling in just the right way. My mom raised me alone. She worked hard and I worked hard too. Everything I've achieved I owe to her. He paused for dramatic effect, blinking at the camera. And now my father's getting old. All he wants is to come home to be with us. But my mom, she chose to walk away. Mom, all I've ever wanted, since I was a little boy, was to have a complete family. I stood at the edge of the crowd just outside the circle listening to him pour out this carefully scripted sob story. And all I felt was a deep, twisting nausea. The male host, clearly some online personality, turned dramatically toward me, then back to Andrew with a voice dripping in manufactured sympathy. So, your mother never remarried? Andrew shook his head solemnly, his face practically screaming what a heartbreaking woman I have for a mother. The host jumped at the bait. Did you hear that, folks? A mother who raised her son alone for decades, never asking for more, never starting over. And a father who lost his way but returned in the twilight of his life, hoping to rebuild what was broken. This isn't a Hollywood movie, he said, turning to the camera with a theatrical sigh. This is real life. Real people. Real heartbreak. Then Gary made his entrance, slow and deliberate, leaning into Andrew's arm like a man half his weight and twice as pitiful. He shuffled forward like he was walking a runway, holding a wilted bouquet of supermarket roses, frozen stiff, their petals already curling at the edges. His eyes were half-lidded, his expression that familiar mix of calculation and insincerity. The host kept the momentum going, stepping front and center to face the live stream. Friends, can you really bear to see a love story like this? Two people who circled each other their whole lives, end in silence and separation? If this were your parents, would you let them miss their second chance at happiness? Cue the soft, overused instrumental swelling in the background. Pink heart emojis fluttered across the screen like digital confetti, and the comment counter began to surge. I stood outside the circle watching my life reduced to a viral clip. Trimmed, polished, filtered through someone else's lens, stripped of all its pain and weight and turned into cheap inspiration. They'd sliced up my story, repackaged it as content, and fed it to strangers in exchange for likes and comments and empty tears. And my voice, wasn't even invited to be told. I stepped forward, slowly moving through the crowd. People whispered as I approached. Phones came up. Someone murmured, "That's her." Andrew froze in place, still gripping the microphone. I held out my hand. "Give it to me." He stared, stunned, clearly not expecting me to speak. After a pause, he hesitantly handed over the mic. I adjusted it slightly and lifted my gaze. "Yes," I began. "I never remarried. But not because I was waiting for anyone to come back. And not because I'm sentimental. It was because I didn't have the luxury or the right to think about myself. I was too busy. Doing laundry, cooking, working 2, sometimes 3 jobs, raising a child. I filled every night of my life to the brim just to survive. It was because this man didn't just abandon me, he took every cent we had and left me with nothing but a mess. I started from the bottom with a little boy by my side. I didn't even know how to mend a shirt, but I learned. I learned to sew, to stitch, to survive. That sewing machine became our lifeline. Every shirt Andrew wore, every meal he ate, was something I pieced together with my own hands. I looked over at Andrew. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. But then he blinked it away. I went on, voice calm and clear. "You say I shouldn't stop my son from welcoming his father home, but where was this man when it mattered? He was spending our money in someone else's bed. Drinking, gambling, living carefree, while I was hemming pants at 3 a.m. to scrape together enough for Andrew's school fees. You think this is a heartwarming family reunion story? No. This is a bad soap opera." I raised my head, letting my eyes sweep across the crowd. And I'm not the supporting character in it. I'm not the bitter woman who needs to be forgiven. I'm not a prop in someone else's redemption arc. I used to be the woman who bent over backwards every day, who broke herself down to keep everyone else whole. But I'm done with that now. I'm not here to dredge up old wounds. I'm here to remind you, some pain doesn't fade. It just never got asked about. The square fell into silence. You could hear the winter wind rustling through bare branches overhead. The livestream host's fake compassion froze mid-expression. Andrew looked pale, like someone had drained the color from his face. I handed the microphone back to him. Softly I said, "If you still want to be a good son, stop using your mother as a character in your sob story." Then I turned to leave. Gary was still standing there, limp roses in hand, frozen mid-scene, waiting for a dramatic moment that would never come. He thought I'd cry. That I'd melt. That I'd come running back into the role he'd cast me in. But I didn't even look at him. I walked right past. Into the life that now belonged fully, finally, to me. No one clapped. No one tried to stop me. Only a quiet voice from somewhere in the crowd whispered, "She's right." It wasn't loud. But it was enough. Like a fresh breeze cutting through the set of a fake stage. And blowing it all away. Winter passed and spring crept in quietly. I sewed a few new tablecloths, swapped out the flowers on the balcony. Jasmine was out of season, so I planted petunias instead, bright, vivid colors that shimmered like ripples on water whenever the wind stirred. I still attended community college classes every week. Some of my friends from the choir suggested we take a summer trip up north to a national park. I told them without hesitation I'd be there. Ashley insisted on helping me pick out hiking shoes. We spent an entire afternoon at the mall trying on different pairs, but in the end she didn't buy anything for herself. Instead she handed me a pair of sleek black skate shoes. She grinned and said, "You look like a retired travel blogger in these." I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my purse. He often helped me cook dinner. I taught her how to make onion and carrot chicken soup. She taught me how to edit videos. Even set up a social media account for me. We filmed our cooking sessions, our sewing projects, even a few clips of butterflies fluttering in the garden. To our surprise, the views started adding up. "Ms. Dawson," she said one night, giggling, "you're a slow burn influencer." I didn't care much about the numbers. What mattered was this quiet realization. I was finally living in my own life. Andrew showed up again on a Sunday in April. I was sitting on a bench in the courtyard, reading an old novel, the sun warm on my face. When the wind turned the page, I heard footsteps. He stood before me looking uneasy. Not defensive, not performative. Just unsure. "Mom," he said quietly. I didn't speak. I closed the book and nodded toward the seat beside me. He sat down. For a long time he said nothing. Then as the breeze picked up again, he spoke. I took Tessa to her parents' house the other day. Her mom packed us some of those cornmeal pancakes she loved as a kid." I nodded, still silent. He glanced at my shoes and gave a small smile. "Those are nice. You look like you." I turned slightly, catching his expression. His head was bowed. "When I was little, I thought you were fearless," he said. "Like you could do anything. But now I get it. You weren't fearless. You just never had the time to be afraid." My eyes stung. He paused, then added, "Lately, I've been cooking. Tessa says my tomato and egg noodles are better than yours ever were." He chuckled. "She's just being nice. I know she still prefers the way you made them." I smiled. My heart softened. Then he brought up Gary. "Dad's gone," he said. "Not dead. I sent him back to the care facility. He's buried in debt. All those friends he used to brag about, they're gone. Tessa's perfume? He stole it. I didn't even know until a few days ago. The caregivers quit so fast because of him." He took a breath, eyes lowered. I kept defending him. Maybe because I didn't want to admit he wasn't the kind of father I imagined. I just wanted a whole family so badly. But I never stopped to see that the only real home I had was the one you built. Then he looked at me steadily, openly. "Mom, I know I'm saying this too late. But if you'll let me, I'd like to get to know you again. Not as my mother. Not as someone's wife. Just as you." I didn't respond with words. I just reached over, gently patted the back of his hand and said quietly, "If you can take care of yourself and your wife, that's all I've ever wanted to hear." A month later, I received a card in the mail. It was from Tessa, hand-painted. Inside it read, "Thank you for raising him. And thank you for letting go, so he could finally learn to turn around and look back." I taped the card to the fridge, right next to Ashley's postcards, the choir's rehearsal schedule, and a photo of me at the top of a hiking trail. Every time I open the fridge, I see them. They remind me. I didn't lose anything. I simply learned at last to keep something for myself.
Later, I came to understand that some kinds of love take time to see clearly. When I was little, I rarely talked about my father. I knew he left early, knew he left my mom and me with a mountain of debt and a wreck of a life, and just disappeared. But even with all that, I kept holding on to this one stubborn thought. He wasn't a bad person. He just messed up. And someday he'd come back. And when he did, we'd start over. I can't say it was love or longing. It was more like a hole. A gap that never filled. Other people had dads. They had whole families. And I didn't. That hole stayed with me, through my childhood, my teenage years, even into adulthood. So when he suddenly showed up that day, my first instinct wasn't doubt. It was relief. Like I could finally patch that hole. I told myself this was a chance to fix things, to rebuild, to forgive. So I brought him home, and I convinced myself, with total certainty, that Mom had always been too hard, too unwilling to let me even mention him. Well, now it was my turn to make the call. I was going to be the bigger person, the one who understood the value of family. I actually thought I was being more mature than her. I gave him the best room, told Tessa to make space. I even tried to get her to call him Papa. She hesitated, then a little awkwardly said, "Papa." But the word didn't sit right in her mouth. Even she could hear it. And when she looked at me afterward, there was something in her eyes I couldn't quite name. Something I didn't want to think about. At first, I didn't see what was wrong. Not until he started causing problems, demanding things, barking orders like he owned the place, being rude to the caregivers. Then stealing from us. Going through our bedroom like it was his. Acting like everything I had was his by default. That's when it hit me. This wasn't some father comes home redemption arc. It was a disaster. A full-blown mess I'd invited into our lives. He was like a magnifying glass. Everything that was already cracked in my life, he lit it up in harsh, burning clarity. Tessa and I grew more distant. But I kept trying to hold it together. I didn't want to admit I'd made a mistake. Didn't want to admit that maybe Mom had seen it all more clearly than I ever did. After she left, I didn't say it out loud, but I was scared. Scared people would say I had no conscience. Scared the neighbors would think Tessa was a bad wife. Scared, most of all, to face this quiet, brutal truth in my own mind. Maybe she left so decisively, because I had already let her down completely. Still, I kept performing, playing the dutiful son, the forgiving son, the son trying to put his family back together. I even set up that awful live stream, staged the whole scene, him crying, me playing along, all for the sake of reunion. And I told myself it was all justified, until she showed up. She walked into that crowd, took the microphone and said, "You think this is a story about reunion? It's not. It's a story about someone who gave everything she had, and then got turned into someone else's emotional plot twist." And in that moment, I saw her. Not the overbearing mom, not the cold-hearted woman, just her, Evelyn Dawson, the woman who carried a whole household on her back, the woman who went decades without ever being asked what she wanted. She was braver than me, and clearer-eyed too. Later, I brought Gary to the care facility, not out of anger, and not because I was running away, but because I finally understood. Just because someone comes back doesn't mean they're meant to stay. Tessa never once complained to me, but I knew these past months hadn't been easy for her. She stopped arguing, and somehow, that made it even harder to bear. I offered to go with her to visit her parents. I watched them fuss over us, packing snacks for the road, walking us out the door. And in that moment, it hit me. I'd never really tried to understand her. And the life my mother lived, it wasn't all that different. I didn't have some grand awakening. I didn't change overnight. But I started cooking. Started cleaning without being asked. Started pausing for 30 seconds during arguments, just to let Tessa finish a sentence. I began calling my mom every so often, not to ask for anything, but just to say my stew turned out too salty, or to ask how her balcony flowers were doing this week. Sometimes she didn't pick up. I understood. It wasn't that she hadn't forgiven me. It's that she no longer needed to look back. She was moving forward, and it was on me to catch up. One day, my mom told me something I didn't fully grasp at the time. There's no kind of love in this world that stays by default. If you don't tend to it, don't answer it. It will burn out eventually. I didn't believe her then. Now I do. I want to rebuild that love. Not with grand gestures. Not with apologies. But with presence. With change. With time, little by little, until maybe she feels it again. I'll never be as strong as she was. But I can do one thing. I can stop letting her down. And I think I still have time.